We're just going to welcome you formally and then give you a chance to speak, but I have a couple of housekeeping items I want to go over with you before that. Colleagues, excellencies, excellencies to be, excellencies in the future, dear friends, it's good to meet with you on this Monday morning. And we're very, very lucky today to have a full meeting of the Peace Building Commission, which will be informal, but nevertheless, I hope informative, where we will be joined by two ministers from the government of Gambia, as well as some other briefers. I'll just go over these housekeeping notes with which you're very familiar, but I'll just repeat them for your benefit. As this would normally be webcast as an open meeting of the PBC that would be open to observers, we're recording the meeting and we'll post the recording to the PBC website. I'd like to remind all the participants to sign in with your name and mission affiliation and to keep your microphones on mute if you were not speaking. Once the briefers have concluded their presentations, we will, as we always do, open the floor to member states. The speakers list is now open. I kindly request all missions to use the chat function to request the floor. As per the usual PBC practice, we will build the speakers list on the basis of protocol and requests for the floor, giving preference to countries first from the region. Given the large number of speakers for the meeting, I'm going to ask you, the briefers, to, if you could, to try to complete your remarks in 5 minutes. And I'd like to request that member states limit their interventions to no more than 2 or 3 minutes. This is always a challenge, but I would remind everyone that one of the most famous speeches in the world, President Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, was 2.5 minutes. So if he can do it, so can all of us. As you may recall, our last PBC meeting in the Gambia took place in June of this year and focused on the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on peace building progress in the country. Since that meeting, there have been a number of significant developments, including challenges in adopting a new constitution, the resumption of public hearings on the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, progress toward the adoption of a security sector reform strategy, and early preparations for the next electoral cycle, which will start with presidential elections a little more than a year from now. All of this takes place amid the ongoing severe economic impact and health impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, including a devastating loss of revenues and livelihoods from the tourism sector, as we discussed during our last meeting in June. Given these developments, today's discussion will be an opportunity to give us an update on progress and to identify how the PBC can continue to support the Gambia's peace-building priorities. We have a number of distinguished briefers with us today who can help shed light on these developments. We have the Foreign Minister, His Excellency Mamadou Tangara. We have the new Minister of Justice, Mr. Dada Ijalo. We look forward to continuing the very good collaboration we had with your predecessor. I might say that I very much enjoyed working with your predecessor, Minister, on the Rohingya issue in the Hague. Following the presentations by the distinguished ministers, we'll hear from Dr. Mohammed Ibn Shabbas, the Special Representative of the SG for West Africa and the Sahel. Following Dr. Shambas, I'm pleased to welcome Ambassador Vabake Gayflor, who's the ECOWAS resident representative to the Gambia. And finally, we're going to hear from Ms. Salama Ngie, who is the National Network Coordinator for the West African Network for Peace Building, known as WANEP. I turn it over to our first briefer and very much welcome His Excellency Minister Tangara. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bob, the Chair. Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon from the Gambia. Mr. Chair, while expressing gratitude to you and the Peace Building Commission for convening this most important meeting on the Gambia, aimed at receiving updates on progress and challenges in the constitutional review ongoing reforms and good governance, as well as to identify what the PBC can do to continue supporting the peace-building priorities in the Gambia. Allow me at the outset to acknowledge my colleague, Honorable Mr. Dauda Jallo, the Attorney General Minister of Justice, who will be providing briefing to the Commission. I would like also to recognize His Excellency Mohammed Ibn Chambers, though he told me that he will not be available, that he is right now in Burkina, but I know he will be ably represented. I want to recognize Excellency Ambassador Vaba K. Geflo, ECOWAS resident representative to the Gambia, and Ms. Salamanja, National Network Coordinator, West Africa Network for Peace Building. To Mr. Oscar Fernandez Taranco, Assistant Secretary General for Peace Building Support Office, and his dynamic team at the PBSO, my delegation remains grateful to you for being there with us during critical times and for providing critical support when it was most needed. If we are talking today about the transition in the Gambia, I think the PBSO played a key role in facilitating it. Mr. Chair, it gives me great pleasure and honor to grace this meeting virtually, having been restricted by undue circumstances of COVID-19 pandemic, from joining you in person to interact and do business as usual. The prevailing working condition that we are currently operating under is a clear testament to the dire circumstances the pandemic has put us in. This PBC meeting on the Gambia calling for updates and suggestion of priorities that PBC can support is more than relevant and timely, considering the very important need to sustain the hard work gains we have achieved together as partners thus far. Mr. Chair, as a witness to the infancy of this very rewarding partnership, which has been nurtured over a period of hard work, sacrifices, and investment, I am happy and optimistic today, more than ever, of the commitment of my government to this partnership. The journey of the Gambia to becoming a success story of peace building and sustaining peace from a state of fragility is a remarkable journey, one that we continue to toil. Our overarching goal on this journey is to build and sustain peace, the aim of which is impossible to attain without continued commitment. Going forward, we are encouraged with renewed optimism for the future as we continue to work with PBSO to complete the ongoing projects as well as to implement the year 2020 approved project and cost extension on young women and men as stakeholders in ensuring peaceful democratic processes and advocates for the prevention of violence and hate speech. This project is very much in line with the government of the Gambia's priority areas like democracy, transparency, rule of law, and economic growth for sustainable peace and development. Mr. Chair, in our quest for advancing sustainable peace within and beyond the Gambia, the government is of the strong conviction that these key areas of concern must be mainstream in our national efforts to build peace and sustain it over the long haul. Regional strategies to uproot the evils of organized crime, trafficking in persons, terrorism, and violent extremism must be supported. It is our resolve to achieve sustainable peace in the Gambia by investing in economic growth guided by the rule of law, democracy, and transparency. Good governance, institutional reforms, and people-centered approaches will continue to inform our peace-building efforts. Mr. Chair, the government is committed to creating an enabling environment that encourages constructive criticism, including a new and vigorous role of the civil society. As partners, the civil society plays a crucial role in peace building and sustaining peace. The government of the Gambia strongly believes that it is the responsibility of every responsible government to provide its citizenry with an atmosphere that is conducive to support the development of their full potential if they are to grow as a people in a sustained, peaceful environment. In closing, Mr. Chair, consolidating the dividends of peace remains one of the major priorities of the government of the Gambia. and we will continue to exert all efforts towards achieving durable peace. We recognize, however, that we have challenges, just like in any restored democracy, including the revival of our economy, a comprehensive reform of our laws and various administrative institutions. Peace building and sustaining peace will remain worthwhile investment for a newfound democracy and sustained peace. We would like to reiterate our appreciation to PBC and encourage your continued material and financial support, capacity building, technical cooperation, and exchange of views. Before thanking you for all, thanking you, I want to really express my happiness and honor to join you. And I'm happy to see many of the colleagues in New York. And I want to tell you that I miss New York very much. I'm looking forward to visiting you soon and seeing my good friends from Morocco, India, well, to name but a few. But I'll be more than happy. And of course, Mr. Chair, I will be more than happy to visit you. And I had an excellent working relation with your predecessor, Mark Andre, who was really very instrumental in the support to the Gambia. And I want to seize this opportunity to thank him and recognize the great efforts that he has invested in supporting the Gambia. And of course, I cannot forget Ambassador Che Teyul of the Republic of Korea, who was the first chairman of the Peace Building Commission who visited Gambia. And I hope, Mr. Chair, you will also be able to visit the Gambia. And thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I was speaking to my predecessor last night, and I told him I'd be having this meeting today, and he wanted me to pass on his very best wishes to you, and in fact, to all of you. It's very kind of you to remember that. I look forward to visiting the Gambia as soon as we're able to travel, and look forward to it. Thank you so much for your presentation. Minister Jallow is next. I think we should all take note of Mr. Jallow's very important personal interventions in constitutional negotiations in September and the very constructive role that he played to get things to a better place. Minister, Your Excellency, you're most welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Excellency. Ambassador Bob Ray, the chairperson of the PBC. Your Excellency, Oscar Fernandez Taranco, if I pronounce it properly, Assistant Secretary General, Peace Building Office. Your Excellency, Dr. Mahmoud Ibn Chambers, I understand he's not personally in attendance, but he's representative. Your Excellencies, members of the PBC, my colleague, Honorable Minister Tangara, who just concluded his remarks, the special representative of the ECOWAS in the Gambia, and Madam Salam Anjai, the National Coordinator of the West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols respectfully observed. This is my maiden meeting of the PBC meeting, and I'm very privileged to represent the government of the Gambia, myself and my colleague minister. We have a short written brief that, if you permit me, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go through for the consumption of the members of the meeting. It is personally gratifying to provide this address on the state of the reforms in the Gambia, fully conscious of the tremendous financial support and assistance that the Peace Building Commission has been providing and continues to provide since our engagement in March 2017. On behalf of the government and people of the Gambia, I wish to express our heartfelt thanks and deep appreciation of your support. The Gambia is on record as having stated that without the PBC, we would not have been able to make the progress we are so proud of today in our nascent democracy. Regarding the draft constitution, you will recall that the Constitutional Review Commission was inaugurated by the President in June 2018 with a view to delivering a new constitution for the Gambian people within a period of 18 months. The Gambia has experienced totalitarian rule for 2 decades, and the current constitution was considered inadequate to uphold democracy and the rule of law. Following the extensive consultation nationwide with Gambian nationals in the diaspora as well, a draft was finally produced that was submitted to the President on the 30th of March 2020. Virtually all Gambians were given an opportunity to express their views on the new constitution. In accordance with the 1997 constitution, the draft constitution was gazetted twice. It was gazetted twice before it was tabled before the National Assembly. The bill that was introduced in the constitution was entitled the Constitution of the Gambia 2020 Promulgation Bill 2020. The bill also, in accordance with the constitution, was required to be supported on the second and third reading by votes of not less than 3/4 of all members of the National Assembly, meaning not less than 42, giving a total of 56 before being referred to referendum by the Speaker through the Independent Electoral Commission. The draft easily passed through the first reading. At the second reading, members debated on the bill and consequently rejected the draft bill by a vote of 31 in favor and 23 against. The topical issues raised during the debate centered on the term of office of the incumbent president, the retirement benefits for judges, the low threshold for impeachment of a president, confirmation of ministers before National Assembly, citizenship, the justiciability of economic rights leading to floodgates of litigation, among others. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there is an urgent need to initiate a political process to dialogue with all stakeholders, especially in the leadership of the political parties, including the president, to find a solution to the current constitutional impasse. In this regard, international mediation is considered desirable as it guarantees independence, neutrality, and impartiality. Ideally, in the eminent African personalities in the form of past presidents or heads of reputable international organizations could be sourced to assist in this process, as has been done in other countries. On the 22nd October, Cabinet mandated me to initiate a dialogue among all stakeholders with a view to reaching a consensus on the draft constitution. International idea, in our opinion, given its familiarity with the current situation in the Gambia, as well as its international mandate in assisting and guiding fragile democracies like ours, could serve as an important vehicle to facilitate this process. International idea and the Ministry of Justice has already tasked experts to work on various issues identified as contentious as a guide for the eminent personalities identified to facilitate this process. The eminent persons will meet with all stakeholders, including political parties represented in the National Assembly, civil society, youth and women groups, and religious groups as well. The exercise is expected to cover not more than 30 days and completed not later than the 30th of December 2020. I have also engaged the UNDP through the resident representative to support us in this process. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, regarding gender equality, there are significant gains in gender mainstreaming made in the draft constitution. The draft constitution has very impressionable improvements on the status and rights of women. Under Section 55, it provides that, for example, the state shall take measures including affirmative actions programs to ensure that women, A, access relevant education and training, B, have opportunities to associate, be represented, and participate in political, social, economic, and other spheres of life. C, to protect from abuse all forms of violence and exploitation, including protection against hazardous or exploitative labor, and finally, access to employment. If you go to Section 68 of the said draft, it also states that the state shall ensure gender balance and fair representation of women, youth, and persons with disabilities on bodies established under and pursuant to this constitution, any act of the National Assembly, and all other public bodies, including statutory bodies and state-owned enterprises. These are remarkable improvements and go a long way in the elimination of discrimination against women and empowerment of women and girls. Furthermore, the Constitution of the National Assembly, 14 seats have been reserved for the women, 2 elected from each administrative district. It is only when we make concrete efforts to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women and work towards the empowerment of women and girls that we can start talking seriously about gender equality and SGBV. I would like to take this opportunity to extend once again our thanks and profound gratitude to the government of Ireland for its support of $300,000 to the Truth, Reconciliation, Reparation Commission, TRRC, to survivors of victims of sexual and gender-based violence, to encourage their continued participation in TRRC processes and to mitigate against the risk of further harm among victims. On women and the Women Enterprise Fund, notwithstanding the stalled constitution, the government continues to accord high priority to women empowerment. Women Enterprise Fund Act was passed by the National Assembly on the 23rd of September 2020. The fund, which is now operational, seeks essentially to uplift the socio-economic status of women. The government has contributed a revolving fund of $5 million and an additional $1 million as operational cost. And the European Union is funding €3 million for a period of 2 years. As part of its restructuring geared towards the promotion of rights of women, Cabinet approved a proposal, excuse me, from the Ministry of Women Affairs to transform the Women's Bureau to a Directorate of Gender and Women Empowerment. With support from the UN Women, all discriminatory laws against women have been identified and reviewed and now before the National Assembly for amendment in our laws. Elections. The Elections Act has been reviewed as part of the preparation for the December 2021 election in consultation with the Independent Electoral Commission and all stakeholders. The Elections Bill will be tabled before the National Assembly during the December 2020 session. It is hoped that, depending on the outcome of the political dialogue, the draft constitution will be concluded in time for submission to the National Assembly in April, to be followed by a referendum in accordance with the calendar issued by the Independent Electoral Commission. The estimated cost for the election, as indicated by the Independent Electoral Commission, would be $662 million, equivalent to about $13.2 million. The UNDP on the 20th of October signed a $4.5 million project titled Support to the Election and Democratic Process in the Gambia to support the upcoming electoral cycle. The UNDP has indicated that only $210,000 is currently available, leaving a massive funding gap for that matter. It is obvious that the Gambia would require external support to conduct the next electoral cycle in a fair, transparent, and credible manner. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on the Truth, Reconciliation, and Reparation Commission, the TRRC for the second time suspended its hearing on the 4th of August 2020 as a result of alarming rise in the COVID-19 cases. As at that time, over 261 witnesses had testified, 195 male and 66 female witnesses. The TRRC had indicated that TRRC's final report and recommendations would be completed and submitted to government by June 2021, which in effect means that an extension will be sought beyond an initial 2-year mandate. In fact, I'm happy to report that the extension has already been sought within the last couple of hours, and the Cabinet, the Executive have given an approval for the TRRC to proceed to end of June 2020. With support from the PBC Transitional Justice Project, a consultant is being recruited to assist with the preparation of the final report of the TRRC. The TRRC has also received funding to implement the Commission's Victims Participation Support Fund. A reparation policy has been adopted by the Commission, and implementation is expected to start before the end of the year. Following consultations made with the interested partners, organizations, and experts, the Ministry has indicated that it has started putting preparations in place for the implementation of the final report, which we are certain will include prosecutions. I recently visited a sister country to seek assistance on how we can improve our Department of Prosecutions within the Ministry of Justice here. Immediately upon assumption of office in July, I visited Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violations to assure them of the continuity of the reforms and a victim-centered transitional justice policy. On security sector reform, Cabinet has approved the vetting agency bill. The bill will not only introduce security vetting for the first time in the Gambia, but will also vet government officials with access to sensitive information in order to build institutions of high repute that are accountable and transparent to the public. The Ministry of Justice is working with the Office of the National Security Advisor on the statutory establishment of the Office of the National Security. It is considered appropriate to endow the office with statutory powers to carry out its mandate and to function effectively as the Secretariat of the National Security Council. The National Security Strategy and the National Security Sector Reform Strategy will be launched tomorrow at a public ceremony at Kairaba International Conference Center. The launch will send a clear message that the government is committed to security sector reform and implementation of the strategies will commence. The SSRS was developed to implement the findings and recommendations arising from the Security Sector Reform Assessment Report in 2017, whereas the National Security Strategy was to support the implementation of the National Security Policy. At this stage, we eagerly await the approval of the second phase of the Peace Building Fund project on the strategic support of national security reform process in the Gambia towards an effective, responsive, and accountable security sector. On the National Human Rights Commission, the COVID-19 pandemic and the declaration of a state of national public emergency compelled the National Human Rights Commission to postpone to 2021 most of the outreach activities it earmarked for implementation in 2020. Despite these challenges, the Commission made significant progress, particularly in the advisory notes it prepared and delivered in consonance with its mandate to make recommendations to government concerning compliance of national legislations with international treaty obligations. Advisory notes on the following were issued: the right to freedom of assembly and association vis-a-vis the Public Order Act, sexual harassment, detailed guidelines for policing public assemblies, 2020 draft constitution, the Elections Act 2001, and caste system-based discrimination. Recognizing the important role played by civil society organizations in creating public awareness on human rights issues, the Commission established the Civil Society Dialogue Platform on Human Rights to ensure meaningful participation of CSOs in monitoring of human rights issues. Its 2019 annual report was also completed and submitted to the National Assembly Standing Committee on Human Rights and Constitutional Matters chaired by the Honorable Speaker, as well as widely circulated to all government ministries, the diplomatic community, the CSOs and NGOs, both nationally and internationally. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the impact of COVID-19 on women and youth is significant. It has led to establishment, particularly in the tourist industry, to suffer considerable losses. Establishment adopted measures such as reduction of staff, reduction of pay, disposal of stock, etc. In a survey carried out by the Gambia Bureau of Statistics on the impact of COVID-19 on tourism and related sectors, out of 226 establishments, 167 had to reduce their working staff as a measure to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, while 65 have to reduce the payment of their retained staff. The same survey revealed that 30 out of 32 hotels reduced their working staff, with the remaining reducing staff payments. Craft market vendors, taxi drivers, fruit sellers, or juice pressers were equally adversely affected. There was virtually a complete shutdown in the tourism industry, further worsening the unemployment situation in the Gambia. Tourism accounts for almost 20% of GDP, supporting close to 42,000 direct and 65,000 indirect jobs. Overall, male employees account for 61.5% and female employees account for 38.5%. The impact on the women have been aggravated by domestic violence, which was reported to be on the increase during the period. The closure of the weekly markets, locally known as Lumos, has significantly affected women engaged in the agribusiness who rely entirely on these markets for access to their products. The containment measures result in food shortage, thus threatening lives and livelihood. The government responded in mitigation of these threats by providing $700 million worth of essential commodities for distribution to the vulnerable population and $100 million to those in the tourist industry. Further measures to mitigate the threats to livelihoods, especially for the youth, may be required as we approach an election year where there could be a tendency to exploit their vulnerable situation and channel their energies into conflict. In this context, we welcome the approved project by the PVC on preparing young women and men as stakeholders in ensuring peaceful democratic process and advocates for the prevention of violence and hate speech, as well as a cost extension for the project strengthening sustainable and holistic reintegration of returnees in the Gambia. Finally, as part of our legislative reform agenda to modernize our laws and bring them in conformity with international best practices, a number of new legislation have been proposed for enactment by the National Assembly. These include criminal and criminal procedure code bills, the prohibition of torture bill, which will criminalize acts of torture for the first time in the Gambia, and international crimes bill to cover the mass atrocity crimes like genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, access to information bill, and the anti-corruption bill. The Children's Act and the Sexual Offences Act are also under review. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Gambia is on track to attain objectives we set out for ourselves at the beginning of the transition. The dream to deliver the Gambia we want is still very much alive and evolving. It is our fervent belief that with the continuous support of the PVC and our partners, the Gambia will transition into fully fledged and flourishing democracy. I cannot conclude this statement without expressing our profound thanks and gratitude to Ms. Aishata Day, UNDP resident representative, and Ms. Serafine Wakana, UND resident coordinator, for their substantial support and guidance in our transition process. I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your first report to us, and it's a very comprehensive one, and we appreciate it. I let you go well over the 5 minutes because it was important for us to get that kind of an overview, and I appreciate it very much. I understand, colleagues, that Dr. Shambas is not with us, but that Giovanna is with us. So I think she can very well fill in for Dr. Shambas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Chair, good morning and good afternoon. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of SRSG Shambas, I would like to thank the Peace Building Commission for convening this important session today. Significant developments have taken place in the Gambia and the wider sub-region since the last meeting on 15 June. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to have a devastating impact on the health and livelihoods of millions of people in West Africa and the Sahel. It will take time to recover, and the UN support is needed more than ever. We heard the Minister of Justice about the impact of COVID-19 in the Gambia. This year has also been a year of multiple elections in the region. Presidential elections have taken place in Togo, Guinea, Côte d'Ivoire, and Burkina Faso, where SRSG Shambas is currently. So similar polls are forthcoming in Ghana and Niger. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Gambia prepares for its own presidential election next year, we count on all Gambians to set the bar high in terms of democratic consolidation and peace building. Promoting inclusive dialogue at all levels is essential. The PBF project on governance and leadership is being implemented to that regard, notably through capacity building of the Inter-Party Committee to promote intra and inter-party dialogue ahead of the 2021 elections. And again, we heard from His Excellency, the Minister of Justice, of all the actions that are already in place in support of promotion of inclusive dialogue at all levels. It is essential for partners to continue to invest in this dialogue as a conflict prevention measure. On 20 October, the government of the Gambia and the UN signed the Electoral Cycle Support Project for 2020-2022, formally rolling out the UN support to the electoral cycle. There is, however, a funding gap of over $2.5 million, which needs urgent support. Again, we heard from His Excellency, the Minister of Justice, the work that is being done, but also the funding gaps. Beyond elections, the ongoing reform processes that have been presented by His Excellency, the Minister of Justice in the Gambia, remain essential to the democratic process. I'm going to talk about these paths of different democratic reform processes that the Minister of Justice has already presented, but from a different perspective to complement very briefly his presentation. So some of these processes have moved faster than others. The health crisis has curtailed programming in some areas. Concerning transitional justice, the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission has made significant strides. Hearings have resumed and the Commission is expected to submit a final report early next year. Strengthening the rule of law institutions and the justice system will be key towards executing any prosecutions that may be recommended by the TRRC. Regarding security sector reform, new impetus is needed to revitalize the process. So we look forward to the adoption of the 2024 Security Sector Reform Strategy and the National Security Strategy tomorrow, November 24. Both strategies are stepping stones for operationalizing the national security policy. It is also important to move forward on the recommendations of the 2019 Security Sector Reform Technical Assessment Mission. A key recommendation of that mission is the convening of an executive retreat on SSR. Concerning constitutional reform, expectations were high that 2 years of broad-based consultations, as presented again by the Minister of His Excellency, the Minister of Justice, would lead to a popular referendum on a new constitution. The government's current initiative to establish an independent panel to revisit the Constitutional Bill 2020 is therefore very welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, in terms of peace building support to the Gambia, I would like to recognize the contributions of the Peace Building Fund that has allocated over $15 million since 2017. An additional amount of about $3 million is being finalized for approval as we speak. The Peace Building Fund has supported transitional reform processes, including support to the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission. I would like also to take this opportunity to recognize the work of our UN sister agencies, especially the resident coordinator and UNDP. Thanks to the impressive efforts of the TRRC, over 35,000 Gambians, including from the diaspora, have so far been directly engaged through community-level outreach missions in the transitional justice process. The Peace Building Fund has also helped to empower youth and women to fully participate in their country's democratic and decision-making processes. For the Peace Building Fund's investments to continue to bear fruit, we need to ensure continuous implementation of inclusive reforms and promotion of transparent, accountable governance. Lastly, I would like to recognize the 20th anniversary of Resolution 1325 this year. In this spirit, I strongly urge that we double up on our own efforts to mainstream gender in all peace building support to the Gambia. I also salute the impressive efforts and actions already deployed by the government of the Gambia in support of gender equality and women's empowerment. Thank you very much.
Ambassador, you are muted.
It's Mr. Gayflor's turn to take the table now. Madam.
Sorry. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Good, thank you.
Good morning on that end and good afternoon to the colleagues. Excellency, the Chair of the Peace Building Commission and distinguished members of the Peace Building Commission, our Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and our Honorable Minister of Justice, other Gambian stakeholders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me express our own appreciation to the Peace Building Commission for inviting ECOWAS to participate in this briefing session at this time. And I would also like to stand on the existing protocols. You will recall that in February 2017, ECOWAS embarked on a needs assessment and fact-finding mission in Gambia as a result of the political impasse after the 2016 elections with President Yahya Jammeh lost and refused to concede. The ECOMAC or Operations Restore Democracy was launched in the Gambia due to the constitutional crisis and dispute over the country's presidency. The operation was in two phases, the intervention and the stabilization phases. The intervention phase was to ensure President Yahya Jammeh hands over power to the democratically elected president, while the stabilization process was to ensure President Adama Barrow was sworn in as president and the country stabilized for democratic governance. The economic stabilization operation was preceded by the new mandate, which came into effect on 21st February 2017, authorizing the ECOMAC to provide security for the president of the Gambia and cabinet minister assist co-mandate. Additionally, the mandate aimed to provide security to the Gambian institutions and facilitate trust building between the new political leadership and Gambian defense and security forces in order for them to assume their Republican duties. It also mandated the ECOMAC to maintain surveillance over Kanalai and other troubled areas in the Gambia. The ECOMAC mandate has continued to experience piecemeal extensions, with the last mandate extended till December 2020. During the 57th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Heads of State and Government on 7 September 2020 in Niamey, Republic of Niger, it was decided that ECOMAC should gradually change into a police mission to this end. A new CONOPS concept of operation and mandate is being prepared to withdraw ECOMAC 1 and ushered in ECOMAC 2 tentatively by 31st January 2021. This informs the planned visit of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, scheduled from 25th to 28th November, to interface with government authorities on relevant political and security-related matters in the Gambia, on the withdrawing of ECOMAC 1 and induction of ECOMAC 2. During this process, the country can be said to is relatively calm and stable, and the SSR strategy and national security documents have been printed and with adoption by the relevant stakeholders, as earlier intimated by the Minister of Justice, who is the chair of the Security Sector Reform Committee. And in addition, efforts are underway to finalize the report on right sizing of the security forces. And one of the recommendations is to allow for voluntary retirement, and development strategies are started on the retirement benefit package to be offered for those who intend to retire voluntarily. And some of the major accomplishments have been the upgrading, approving ECOMAC troops coming from 500 to 1,000 to absorb the 500 Senegalese who were here to help strengthen the forces on the ground, and also recruited consultants and work along with the UNDP.
I think you're
on having retreats in supporting the office of the Dr. Middle. Excuse me?
Your voice is not very clear. We're having some problem with in and out. Maybe you should
Sorry.
take off your video. Just cancel your video so that your audio will be stronger.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. If you could wrap up in a minute, Baba, please, that would be good.
Yes. Okay, the ECOMIC forces also conducted middle cadet level training of the President of the Gambian Armed Forces. And some of the key challenges so far has been despite the milestones achieved on the SSRO implementation process in the Gambia, we know that no process is smooth, so challenges still persist. And some of these challenges are positive or funds to the Office of the National Security Advisor needs to be legislated by the National Assembly. There have been some lack of coordination at times in activities across sector, the capacity building, deficiency of personnel, institutional equipment, and also the likelihood of the expiration of ECOMIC mandate expiring before the implementation of the security sector reform of the Gambia. And also one of the major challenges have been the weak functioning of oversight bodies and depth of infrastructure and frequent turnover of national security key actors. And because of time, I'd just like to, at this time, express on behalf of ECOWAS, our thanks to the international community, particularly the EU, other development partners, and the Peace Building Fund for all of their contributions in support of the stabilization process in the Gambia. And I would also like to reiterate the commitment of ECOWAS to supporting the transformation process in the Gambia. Thank you. Sorry for the connection.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much for your presentation. Our final speaker and final briefer will be Salama Njaya, who's the National Network Coordinator for the West Africa Network for Peace Building. Salama, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. The Chair and members of the Peace Building Commission, Excellencies present, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Tangara, Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mr. Jallo, our partners, UN, the Gambia, and ECOWAS, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols duly and respectfully observed. I am indeed honored to be given the opportunity on behalf of the Gambia civil society organizations to deliver a statement on this very important ambassadorial level virtual meeting on the Gambia. I wish to express the CSO's community's profound gratitude to the UN and the Peace Building Fund for the immense contribution towards sustaining peace in the Gambia. It should be highlighted that the Gambia civil society organizations continue to play a crucial role in the transitional justice and other reform processes, more so during the constitutional review process, as we have been actively engaging all the relevant stakeholders up to the debate of the bill in the National Assembly. It was therefore very unfortunate that the draft constitution, which was presented to the National Assembly in September 2020, failed to meet the required vote to move to the next stage, as 23 out of the total members of the National Assembly voted against it. Through a press conference, the CSOs expressed concern and disappointment over the rejection of the Constitution Promulgation Bill 2020, as the rejection will have serious negative impacts on the ongoing transitional justice processes and legal reforms essential to strengthening the rule of law and nascent democracy after 22 years of dictatorship. As CSO, we believe that the draft constitution speaks to the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people, and the passing of the bill to the next phase and ultimately referendum would have presented a remarkable achievement in terms of the urgent need for a complete constitutional overhaul in line with the overriding objectives of the National Development Plan. Going forward, the leadership of the CSOs felt it prudent to reach out to key stakeholders to assess the possibility of retabling the bill and encourage these stakeholders to remain available for dialogue in the interest of the nation. Key political party heads and members of the government were contacted. The message from CSOs was simple. We stressed the need for a new constitution to usher in a third republic. Also, the need for continued dialogue and engagement was emphasized to move the constitutional review process forward. The leadership of the CSOs is in close contact with the Ministry of Justice and has pledged its readiness to do all in its powers in support of the review process to its logical conclusion. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the role of women in all these reforms and in peace and security processes is key for sustaining the country's peace. The Gambia ratified the UNSCR 1325, 2000 on women, peace and security, and further developed a national action plan in 2012. However, much needs to be done to ensure women's equal and active participation and to amplify their voices in peace and security. CSOs are engaging government and other partners towards updating the Gambia's National Action Plan on UNSCR 1325 and to enable women take their rightful place around the table. The Women's Bureau, with support from the UNFPA through the Peace Building Fund, organized a series of capacity building and programs for the women group on women, youth, peace and security on Resolution 1325 and its related protocols earlier in this quarter, and an action plan has been developed for 2021. One of the Gambia, with support from ECOWAS, also conducted a survey on the implementation of the Gambia's National Action Plan of Resolution 1325 to document key achievements and existing gaps in the implementation of the National Action Plan and to map out key stakeholders and their respective roles in women, peace and security planning, implementation, monitoring, and reporting. The findings revealed that the implementation of the National Action Plan contributed significantly to the promotion and protection of the rights of vulnerable women and children, as well as increased their access to services on legal aid, mediation, and peace building across the country. Thanks to the resolution, the country has now formulated and adopted laws and policies to enhance the implementation of regional and international laws and policies on women's rights and participation in decision-making process, such as the Women Act 2010, Child Marriage Act 2016, Domestic Violence and Sexual Offenses Act 2013, Gender and Women Empowerment Policy 2010 to 2020, and the Anti-FGM Act 2015. Despite the gains registered, there are still challenges hindering the implementation of the National Action Plan, and these include limited resources, societal norms and patriarchal society affects the progress of gender equality and the empowerment of women. Lack of proper coordination among government partners and key stakeholders in the implementation of the National Action Plan. There is also limited data and time on women, peace and security. However, there are some concrete interventions towards enhancing the women, peace and security agenda and women in decision making. This includes one of the Gambia, with funding from the UNFPA through the Peace Building Fund, trained and mentored 95 female political aspirants from the 16 registered political parties ahead of the 2021-2023 electoral cycle. Also, a forum for female security officials funded by the UNDP was held and a communique was developed. Over 300 female farmers from 3 regions within the Gambia were earlier this quarter trained on mediation and dialogue on climate change-induced vulnerability. This training was supported by the UNFPA through the Peace Building Fund. Finally, I am indeed optimistic that with the continued support that the CSOs continue to receive from partners, especially the UN office in the Gambia, most of the challenges highlighted will be surmounted as we head to 2021. Thank you very much for the invitation and for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Salama, for your presentation. We always try in our meetings to have the representatives of civil society and to give us a sense of what's happening on the ground on a daily basis. And we very much appreciate your presence and your presentation today. Colleagues, that completes the presentation from the briefers. Let me stress that our briefers are welcome to stay with us and to hear comments from a number of representatives here at the United Nations who representing their national governments. I've now got a list. First, we'll hear from Sierra Leone. Next, we'll hear from Egypt. Then we'll hear from Morocco, India, and Japan. Those are the first five. So Sierra Leone, Ali Akaba.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you for convening this very important meeting. And in particular, I'd like to extend deep appreciation to the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Justice and Attorney General of the Gambia for the briefings today. I particularly commend the PBC for the exemplary leadership in facilitating the work of the PBC in the Gambia. I believe that as a delegation, we very much appreciate this special focus and opportunity to look at development in Gambia. My delegation notes with concern the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic for the Gambia's peace-building efforts, key reforms and processes, including the suspension of vital work on transitional justice, human rights, as well as its effect on relevant sectors of the Gambian economy, such as tourism and commerce, with specific consequences for women and youth, small business owners, informal sector, including the strains on human security, state public trust, and the democratization process in general. I would like to commend the effort made by the government of the Gambia in strengthening the COVID-19 response and the affected sectors of the economy, as well as assisting population with food and vital needs to stimulate the economy and to continue important reforms and peace-building processes. We take note of the resource gap in the Gambia's budget created by these additional expenditures. We call on the government of the Gambia to enhance its effort with the support from the PBC and the international community to continue addressing the country's peace-building priorities, including crucial political and economic processes and reforms, and the ongoing preparation for the 2020-2021 general elections. We appreciate the specific developments in transitional justice and the resumption of work by the Truth and Reconciliation Reparation Commission, and we look towards the submission of its final report to the executive. We also welcome efforts made to empower women and youth to play active role in peace building and development initiatives, and we further urge all concerned stakeholders not to lose sight of the Gambia's peace building agenda. Mr. Chair, we appreciate the changes made by the UN and other development partners to integrate the challenges of COVID-19 in their assistance to the Gambia. We commend the pivotal role played by women in promoting economic development and in helping the society address challenges emerging from the pandemic. We, in particular, my delegation, therefore welcomes the commitment to work with the Gambia in further promoting the critical role played by women and youth as key drivers in peace-building processes and in addressing the socio-economic impact of COVID-19. We acknowledge the support provided by the Peace-Building Fund in key peace-building areas, including projects to address COVID-19 related issues in the Gambia. It is therefore crucial for the PBF to help mobilize international solidarity in support of the Gambia's immediate response and effort towards ensuring post-COVID socio-economic recovery and sustained attention on the country's peace-building priorities. Lastly, Mr. Chair, strategic partnerships in support of peace-building priorities in the Gambia remain a key urgency for the United Nations. To continue to work closely with the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the African Development Bank, and other relevant stakeholders to analyze fragility, sustain peace, and build resilience. I am very hopeful about the future of the Gambia, and I look forward to working with you on this important item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and we're looking forward very much to our meeting with you next month carry on our ongoing dialogue. It's wonderful to have you with us. Our next speaker is Mohammed Idris from Egypt, followed by Omar from Morocco. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, dear Bob. I commend your leadership and thank you for convening us today. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge and welcome the presence of my dear brother, His Excellency, Mr. Mamadou Tangara, Foreign Minister of the Gambia, whom I first met in the Gambia during his first term as Foreign Minister, before we meet here again in New York, and then his well-deserved comeback as Foreign Minister. I also welcome and appreciate the briefing by Mr. Douala Jalloud, the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Gambia, as well as our dear sisters, the Ms. Giovanni representing the distinguished SRG in Chambas, and our sisters representing ECOWAS and the civil society in the Gambia. And of course, our continued appreciation to ASG Oscar and PBSO team. And thank you for the thoughtful remarks. Egypt welcomes the progress made thus far in the constitutional review process in the Gambia, as well as transitional justice and security sector reform processes. We are cognizant of the main areas of contention in the constitutional review process. In this context, Egypt supports all efforts aiming at bridging the remaining gaps, including through the wise decision of the Gambian Minister of Justice and Attorney General on the establishment of an independent panel to build consensus around the constitutional draft with a view to retable it at the National Assembly. We are equally mindful of the destabilizing socioeconomic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Gambian constitutional, transitional justice, and security sector reforms. We have learned about how the pandemic further exacerbated existing vulnerabilities in the Gambia in our previous PBC meeting in June. Today, we have also gotten updates on the challenges faced in that vein. Mr. Chair, the PBC has a key role to play to ensure continued international attention and support the peace-building priorities of the Gambia. In this regard, I would like to share the following few points. First, strengthening partnership is imperative to ensure coordinated and effective support to the Gambian national peace-building priorities. Therefore, the UN, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the African Development Bank, and other relevant stakeholders should continue to work closely to analyze fragility, sustain peace, and build resilience. We have seen encouraging results of the UN World Bank collaboration in the Gambia. Such efforts should be sustained with due attention to the COVID response. The empowerment of women and youth in peace building can't be overstated. More efforts need to be taken to mitigate the disproportionate impacts of the pandemic on livelihoods, in particular those related to women. Prioritizing investment in strengthening national ownership in the Gambia through building national institutions and capacities stands out as a central piece around which all other peace building and sustaining peace efforts revolve. This will ensure the effectiveness and sustainability of peace building efforts in a way that moves beyond quick fixes and short-term stabilization to create prosperity and peace. The international community should support all endeavors to accelerate in constitutional, transitional justice, and SSR reforms as the Gambia is approaching the presidential elections scheduled in December 2021 to preserve peace gains. Our part is to continue to provide support to the Gambia through the technical assistance, training, and capacity building programs provided by the Cairo Center for Peacekeeping and Peace Building and Egyptian Agency for Partnership for Development. Moreover, the African Union Center for Post-Conflict Reconstruction and Development can further complement peace building efforts in the Gambia. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, I wish to reiterate Egypt's unwavering support and solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the Gambia in overcoming the destabilizing impacts of COVID-19 and completing the constitutional, transitional justice, and security sector reforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Is Omar there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Ambassador. This is Omar, DPR of Morocco. Ambassador Hilal, who was present since the beginning, had to leave for an urgent meeting. So if you allow me, I would make our intervention on his behalf.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for convening this very important meeting of the PBC. Also, our warm thanks and welcome to their excellencies, the honorable ministers, His Excellency Mr. Mamadou Tangara, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and His Excellency Mr. Dauda Jallo, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, of our sister country, the Gambia, for their briefings and for their resolve that they and the whole government of Gambia has showed in carrying out their national peace building path, particularly through these challenging times. I also thank all our previous eminent speakers and briefers today for their very informative overviews and briefings. Mr. Chair, we all have been witness to the outstanding efforts the Gambia continuously deployed to build and sustain peace, while resolutely carrying out its transitional reform process, even amidst heightened challenges to the adverse and multifaceted impacts of the COVID-19. Indeed, and regretfully, the scourge of the COVID-19 has already exerted huge strains on the Gambian economy, particularly the vital tourism and agriculture sectors. We therefore highly commend the Gambian government for the measures undertaken in order to contain and mitigate the COVID pandemic. We welcome, among other encouraging announcements and achievements, the resumption of, on October 12, of public hearings by the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, and the approval by the National Assembly of $50 million in support of the economy and the fight against the pandemic. We welcome all the achievements and efforts by the Gambian governments at the economic, political, and social levels and all other levels to achieve their peace-building priorities. The Gambia stands at a critical juncture of its sustaining peace process, and the international community, the PBC, the PBF, and bilateral partners have to come together to bring a sustained support to the Gambia. My country, Morocco, remains committed to the peace, security, stability, and development of the sisterly country, the Gambia. No later than November 12th, both countries further solidified their long-standing brotherly and cooperative bilateral relations with the signing of 2 new agreements in the areas of health and diplomatic training during the visit of the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tangara, to his brother, the Moroccan Foreign Minister, Mr. Nasser Boita, in Rabat. They further agreed to hold a 3rd joint committee in Banjul at the beginning of the next year and to launch the preparation for the next economic forum with a view to giving a greater impetus to the economic dimension of the bilateral relations, which are very fruitful, very brotherly, and within the South-South cooperation that Morocco has with the sisterly country, the Gambia. I wish also to add that call on the continued engagement and the commitment of the international community to the Gambian peace-building process. I wish in this regard to commend the work of the PBC in terms of in-depth and on-the-ground analysis of the cross-cutting impacts of the pandemic on countries in peace-building contexts like the Gambia. The Peace Building Fund is also carrying out an invaluable work in support of the Gambian transitional justice, security sector reform, climate security, and rule of law, and we kindly ask the PBF to strengthen its support to the Gambia. Finally, Gambia is a really good and great success story of the United Nations and the PBC. The international community, including the UN, the bilateral partners, the international financial institutions, has to do their utmost and to continue to support the Gambian government at all levels and in all sectors of its sustaining peace in order to allow Gambia to achieve all the priorities that was put in place by its government. Morocco will stand and continue its full and strong support to the Gambia. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I've now got, I'll give three warnings for 3. India, the PR, Japan, Kimihiro, and Slovakia are next. And then after that, I'll read out 3 more. So India, my friend, my brother, Tirumurti is up.
I thank the chair of the Peace Building Commission, Ambassador Bob Ray, for organizing this very important meeting. I also take this opportunity to thank all briefers, particularly my friend, the Honorable Foreign Minister of the Gambia, His Excellency Mamadou Tangara, and also the Honorable Minister of Justice of the Gambia, His Excellency Mr. Dauda Jallow. India deeply appreciates the steady progress being made by the Gambia in the last 3.5 years, despite challenges posed by COVID-19 this year. The gains made in nurturing democracy, reform, the political process, peace and reconciliation, and economic growth need to be acknowledged and sustained. In the context of the negative impact of COVID-19, continuing support of the Peace Building Commission and the international partners will be essential. India recognizes the primacy of national governments in driving priorities for sustained peace at all stages of conflict, and that inclusivity is the key to advancing national peace-building objectives. Mr. Chair, I had the privilege to visit the Smiling Coast of Africa in July 2019, while accompanying the Honorable President of India on his first ever visit to the Gambia. We had also welcomed the visit of the Honorable Foreign Minister of Gambia in March last year. We welcome the commitment of the government of the Gambia in their march on the path of democratic governance and reform and in their political process. India has, in keeping with the priorities of the Gambia, extended development partnership and support for social and economic reform and progress. India has provided concessional lines of credit of $78 million to support various projects, including the National Assembly Complex in Banjul. Another line of credit of $92 million has been extended for infrastructure development. India has extended assistance from the India-UN Development Partnership Fund to implement a project on the using of drones and early warning system for pre- and post-floods disaster management. We have set up a vocational training center and incubation center in Banjul. Each year, young Gambians travel to India for education, for skilling, and for navigating the digital world. India's flagship Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program and other scholarship programs attract more than 100 participants each year. India has also implemented the EVBAP Network Project, another flagship e-learning project for Africa. This year, several Gambian students have been given scholarships and are attending the virtual online graduates program offered by prestigious Indian educational institutions, a solution which has found resonance in the time of COVID. In June 2019, India hosted 25 permanent secretaries and senior civil servants at our National Center for Good Governance. We hosted a delegation of the Gambian Civil Service Commission in December last year. We also organized a special training program for 20 Gambian diplomats in 2018. Earlier this year, India extended support to the Gambia in its fight against COVID pandemic by supplying essential medicines. We have also responded positively to the request for debt restructuring. Mr. Chairman, let me reiterate that India remains committed to partner the Gambia. We look forward to a continued friendship and partnership and wish the Gambia well in their political process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Next, from Japan, Kimihiro Ishikane. Ambassador.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Bob Ray. Well, Minister Tangara, Minister Jallow, and other distinguished briefers, thank you very much for your very much informative and comprehensive briefings. Well, I'm really encouraged to hear that the Gambia continues to advance its reform efforts, with a strong political will, and we welcome the constitutional review processes. Especially, I'm encouraged to hear the idea put forward by the Justice Minister regarding the extensive dialogue among more comprehensive stakeholders. I'm hoping that will bear fruits. And we also commend the Gambia's strong commitment to security sector reform, and that will lead to a security sector reform strategy adoption. Well, for all that, I think we need to, we really commend the efforts of people of Gambia and the government of Gambia, and of course the efforts of the UN system and people working for the UN, and starting from the regional coordinator. But we understand the process is painstaking and requires patience. The international community, therefore, must stand by Gambia to back their reform efforts. And in this regard, the PBC has an important role to play in maintaining international attention and mobilizing support. But with all the efforts of the government and people of Gambia, I think Gambia is facing challenges. Our cooperation has to deliver tangible results on the ground and has to be timely. Our cooperation has to be holistic, covering the macroeconomic aspects, including debt issues, security-related assistance to survival for the people, and of course, securing fair distribution of vaccine. We have to do all that collectively and individually, but consistently with harmonization on the ground. Well, we hope the PBF will keep helping the Gambia build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions in various sectors, including women and youth empowerment. Well, as for Japan, we stand by Gambians and continues to play its part. We are engaged in collective efforts on macroeconomic issues and fair distribution of vaccine. For years, we provided multi-sectoral support to Gambia and will continue to do so under the banner of a new approach for peace and stability in Africa. This includes our support for IOM's project to enhance the border management capacities of the Gambian authorities. This year, Japan has provided a bilateral grant aid of about $14.5 million for the water supply project in rural areas and about $2.3 million for food assistance. We wish to work with other players to deliver tangible outcomes on the ground to help the efforts of the people of Gambia. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimihiro. Slovakia, Mikhail.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Dear Bob, sincere greetings to all our dear colleagues and a special welcome and thank you to our friend, the Honorary Foreign Minister, Mr. Mamadou Tangara, as well as to the Honorable Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, Mr. Jallow, and all the briefers. It's been extremely useful and informative for us to hear an update on the important developments, whether it's related to the crucial constitutional process or the national security strategy, of course, election-related issues, among others. Like others, of course, we've been following very closely the reform process in general, particularly the recent developments regarding the draft of the new constitution. And we very much welcome the efforts invested so far into building consensus around the constitutional draft with a view of hopefully retabling it at the National Assembly. The success of the constitutional review process would undoubtedly contribute in a major way to a peaceful and inclusive conduct of the 2021 elections. Therefore, we would like to underline the importance of investing further political efforts as well as technical and organizational efforts to the review process, leading also, of course, to successful elections. It also needs to be emphasized that the constitutional review process is closely linked to other pillars of the democratic transition that have been mentioned already, the transitional justice process with the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, and obviously also the security sector reform. The international community certainly needs to remain engaged in the political and reform process, including on the security sector reform. And in fact, determining the size, role, and affordability of security institutions or performing human rights vetting are certainly among the top priorities. We very much welcome the upcoming executive retreat on security sector reform, and as we have heard, also tomorrow's presentation of the national security strategy, which is critical. Of course, also the PBF project focused on SSR has been mentioned, and we are well aware of the fact that UNDP has also recently employed a consultant to develop a matrix for the coordination of international assistance in the Gambia. These are all important efforts. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19 related challenges, we were not able, as a group of friends of security sector reform, to reconvene a roundtable which was held back in April of 2018, focused on the issue of security sector reform in the context of peace building and sustaining peace. But we are hopeful that also through meetings like this one today, we would be able to keep track of the developments, and hopefully early next year, we will be able to address the SSR issue in the Gambia in a more comprehensive manner, of course, depending on the progress that we are able to achieve also with the constitution and with the overall reform process. So we certainly think that further institutional capacity and governance focus is in line in the security sector reform context. And together with the other PBC members, we are committed to sparing no effort in supporting the Gambia in this important endeavor. I would leave it at that, Bob. Thanks very much, and best wishes to the Gambia and all the efforts.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Next, we have Anna Karen and Susan Mwangi from Kenya and Luis Ugarelli from Peru. So Anna Karen, you're up from Sweden.
Thank you very much, Bob, Mr. Chair, and for organizing this meeting, and special appreciation to Ministers Tangara and Jallow for their update, but also for them using the PBC as a platform to coordinate peace building activities in the Gambia. I also like to thank Miss Giovanni and Miss Gayflor, and Ms. Nie, and we always value the interaction with the civil society, and very impressed by the work of VANEP in the Gambia. I also welcome very much what the Minister Tangara said about the importance that he attached to the role of civil society in the Gambia. Let me make a few remarks. First, to thank Minister Jallow for his update and to encourage continued deliberation within the constitutional review process, as well as the transitional justice and security sector reform processes. I'm happy that there is a good cooperation also with international IDEA. I totally agree that these processes need to be inclusive and that all voices need to be heard, especially women's. I take good note of what Ms. Nia said about the importance of the engagement of the people, but also welcome Minister Jallow's what he stated about the improvements on the gender equality in the constitution. But I think what Ms. Giovanni and Ms. Nia said about the need to double up our efforts for gender mainstreaming needs to be well noted. Secondly, the national reconciliation process plays a vital role for achieving sustainable peace in the Gambia. We are glad to hear that the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission has resumed its work. Together with the National Human Rights Commission and the Constitutional Review Commission, they are fundamental building blocks for the continued construction of the Gambian democracy. And thirdly, as we have heard, remaining challenges include the security sector reform process, which needs to be strengthened and accelerated. Confidence building measures are also needed more broadly to gain the trust and support from the population. In particular, continued inclusion of women at all levels is a prerequisite for success. Lastly, continued international attention and support is crucial to contribute to the ongoing national initiative to sustaining peace. The PBC has shown that it has the ability to mobilize the support and to assist in the coordination efforts. We also welcome the efforts of the Peace Building Fund As a peace-building member, we look forward to continuing to support Gambia on its journey towards consolidating peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna Karen. Susan Mwangi from Kenya, and then Senor Ugarelli from Peru.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Excellencies, the Honorable Ministers of the Gambia, Honorable Mamadou Tangara and Honorable Dodo Jallow, and other briefers for the informative briefings. It has been very informative to listen to the updates on what is going on at the ground level, including the progress being made and the challenges that need to be addressed. The regional perspectives are also very useful to see to it the work of neighboring countries and existing mechanisms and coordination in support for peace building in the Gambia. And we want to thank Giovanna and Ms. Gela. Thank you for your candid and informative briefings. On previous occasions, the PBC has also heard directly from youth representatives regarding their peace building work in the Gambia. We commend the continued practice of including these voices, including the voices of the civil society, and my delegation welcomes the integration of these first-hand experiences, resourcefulness, positive contributions in the promotion of peace transitions, including national reconciliation efforts. Mr. Chair, elections, while being critical in political transitional processes, should not be a be or an end all when it comes to supporting countries. There is much more needed before and after elections to support nation building. The enhancement of the integration of the rule of law, security sector reform SSR, transitional justice, effective governance, and women and youth participation in international stabilization efforts is key in ensuring a comprehensive approach for sustainability of peace. My delegation welcomes particularly the PBF's targeted investments and partnerships with the key entities including UNDP, WFP, UNICEF, and the EU, and other international partners and donors in all these areas in support of the government and the people of the Gambia. The emerging challenges of climate change and the pandemic also call for further review of the functionality and readiness of the governance institutions. And we have just heard how the hospitality and tourism sectors have been adversely affected by the pandemic. Attention and investments, therefore, should be given to all the three pillars of peace and security, development, and human rights. The PBC will need to continue to support the Gambia in the identification of and addressing of key challenges that continue to hinder the integration of transitional justice, SSR, and effective governance into stabilization efforts. This will enhance ownership, coordination, complementarity, partnership, inclusivity, and gender mainstreaming in political transition efforts. In this regard, we welcome the announcement of the establishment of an independent panel to build consensus around the constitutional draft. Inclusivity and transparency will be key in the finalization and operationalization of the review process. The dialogue provided participants with a common understanding of the concepts of and the linkages between the rule of law, security sector reform, transitional justice, and governance within the context of the AU policies and strategies as they relate to stabilization efforts in post-conflict countries and countries in transition, such as the Gambia. As I conclude, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to draw attention to the African Union policy framework on SSR, and perhaps to pose a question to the briefers. The AU policy framework on SSR was an attempt for Africa to take over ownership of the SSR process, both at the national and regional levels. The framework recognizes that the decisional leadership in the implementation of the national SSR activities remains with member states based on their own assessment of the national security and developmental needs. To what extent can or has this framework assisted in the areas of training, capacity building, assessment, and implementation of the SSR process in the Gambia? I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ambassador, you're muted.
I was trying to cut off a siren. Luis Ugarelli from Peru.
Thank you, Mr. President. Peru would like to thank you for convening us to this timely meeting, and also thanks the distinguished briefers for their relevant presentations. We believe that overall, the Gambia continues to be a successful example of preventive diplomacy and peace building. Despite the deceleration on the ongoing reforms and processes, we welcome the quick reaction from the Gambian government to put them back on track. In this scenario, we urge the Gambian political actors to engage in constructive dialogue and compromise to resume and complete the constitutional process. The PBC should support all the efforts aiming to avoid the postponement of the reforms, taking into account that there is an approved electoral calendar. In the meantime, we should also continue supporting socioeconomic development initiatives to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The experience in PBC shows that peace building and development are interrelated. In that line, it is crucial to prevent the loss of peace building dividends due to an insufficient progress in terms of development. In addition, the PBC should continue reaching out to international financial institutions in order to mobilize resources and grant well-coordinated and coherent support for the stimulation of the economy and promotion of employment, especially in the tourism and business sectors. Finally, it is important that the responses to the pandemic include the participation at all levels of decision-making of local authorities and influential figures, such as village leaders, as well as women and youth. The engagement of civil society is crucial for ensuring the success of the programs aimed to secure social and health conditions to preserve the peace-building gains in the long term. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. Two more speakers, Matthias Lekarts from Germany and Alice Jacobs from the UK. Matthias, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, let me also express our deepest appreciation for the participation of the honorable ministers of the Gambia. It's a very good sign, and thanks a lot for your contribution. Also would like to thank the other briefers for their very valuable insights. Mr. Chair, given the recent and the upcoming elections in West Africa, I think we all want to explore how we can mobilize our resources in order to stabilize the region and to help the countries. And this session and this meeting is a very good opportunity to do that. And at the outset, I would like also to express our appreciation for the progress that has been made in the Gambia in terms of democratization and in terms of peace building over the last years. However, challenges and tasks remain at hand, and colleagues have addressed them already. The setback after the 2 years constitutional review process represents a cause for concern. It remains crucial to revitalize the constitutional review, which is at the basis for further reforms as well for the electoral process. This is also a decisive step to build further trust in the state and its institutions, especially in these times in which the pandemic causes distress and restrictive measures, in which the pandemic causes distress and restrictive measures cause further resentment. Sorry. We would therefore encourage the government of the Gambia to swiftly commence an inclusive dialogue process that aims at resolving the contentious issues in the context of the constitutional reform endeavored so far. In that regard, we welcome the cabinet decision of 22nd of October, mandating the Minister of Justice and Attorney General to initiate a formal dialogue among all stakeholders in order to reach consensus on the contentious aspects. We see a strong societal aspiration for a new constitution in the Gambia, and we therefore hope that this dialogue process will begin very soon, such that it can be brought to a timely completion, leading to a referendum. The presidential elections scheduled for December 21 should be carried out on a new constitutional basis and not in the framework of the old 1997 constitution. With regard to all reforms, be it political, constitutional, electoral, and the peace-building processes, they all should be inclusive. In particular, the equal and meaningful participation of women has to be guaranteed. In our last meeting in June, we heard about and discussed the central role of women and youth for the economy and how in particular their business activities are impacted or rather hindered by the COVID pandemic. in order to achieve not only peaceful stability, but also sustainable socio-economic development, we must make sure that women and youth are in the focus of all activities. The PBC has already proven to have an important role in this regard, providing a platform to put the issue of gender equality and youth participation on the agenda. Mr. Chair, Germany will remain a reliable partner of the Gambia and its path towards democratization. We will continue to extend our support to the country's efforts in building a legitimate, accountable, and professional security sector. Germany is committed to sustain both bilateral as well as regional efforts in support of the security sector reform, and in particular to police capacity building and respective reforms that have been at the core of our engagement since 2017. In our view, close coordination between international donors is key to improve efficiency and efficacy to international support to the police and public security sector. Beyond that, we are looking at possibilities to increase our support for economic development. Finally, Germany is also one of the biggest donors of the Peace Building Fund, and we participated in a donor visit to the Gambia last year. The PBF is one of the most important actors in the field of stabilization and the promotion of peace on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. We're now going to hear from Alice Jacobs from the UK.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll also add my thanks to our briefers for joining us today, including the Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs and also Minister for Justice, and also wanted to add our thanks for your continued positive engagement with the Peace Building Commission. Ministers, as you know, the UK is a close friend and partner of the Gambia, and we were very grateful for the warm reception that our Director General received during his visit to Banjul earlier this month. And I know that our High Commission is working closely to support the Gambia's peace building efforts. So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make two brief points today. Firstly, on efforts to prepare a new constitution, and thank you very much for the helpful updates we heard on that today and wider developments. So we believe that a new constitution is essential to consolidating the democratic gains made in recent years. And while this is of course a matter for the Gambian people, but the draft constitution was the result of a nationwide consultation, including the diaspora. And it was also a commitment made by the transitional government. So the UK was concerned that the new draft was rejected by Parliament, but we're pleased to see that a mediation process backed by the government is underway to agree a compromise draft. And we're pleased that the UK has been able to provide financial support to the mediation process. And secondly, I wanted to emphasise the critical importance of the continued process of democratisation in the Gambia across different areas, but especially the new constitution and the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. And the UK urges the Peace Building Commission and international partners to support this, both through technical assistance and political support, to maintain that momentum and progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. I'm going to ask our briefers now if they have any comments, brief comments, in response to what they've heard from a number of countries. And then I'm going to ask the PR from Gambia, as well as Oscar, to say a few words. But perhaps I could start with you, Minister Jallow. Do you have any comments on what you've heard with respect to the constitutional process and some other suggestions that have been made?
Thank you. Well, most of the interventions I've had are complimentary, and we're grateful for all the support that we've had. I took note of a question from, I believe it's Kenya, who is interested to find out as to what role the AU policies on security sector reform has been utilized in the Gambia. I'm happy to report that we have an AU expert currently with us in the Gambia who is forming part of the International Advisory Group supporting the Gambia security sector reform. So I believe whatever the team is working they factor in the AU standards. That's what I wanted to add on that. For the rest, we remain very appreciative of all the support, and like I said in my statement, we assure you of our continuous commitment to this transition program, and we intend to see it to its logical conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Mamadou, are you there? No. So Giovanni, do you have any comments? Are you still there? How about Vaba Gayflor? Salama?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Any comments, Salama?
Yes.
We'd love to hear from you.
No comment, actually. I think most of them, as highlighted by the Attorney General, they are just compliments, which we highly appreciate as a country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And please keep in touch with us because we do want to make sure that we're always in contact with civil society on the ground. Maybe I could ask my colleague Lang, have you got any additional remarks that you'd like to
Baba
make?
is here.
Hmm?
Same Baba is here.
Yes.
You were asking, no, I just wanted to add my own contribution, to my own appreciation to the Peace Building Fund again. Like I said, they all said that we observed, they were making very candid interventions to help make this process better, and they were quite supportive. And I think we welcome that as a team, and we thank you again for all of your support. ECOWAS stands ready to work with everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, Lang, do you have any comments?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad. Mr. Dauda A. Jallo, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Gambia. Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General in West Africa, represented by Madame Giovanni, ASG Oscar Fernandez and team, Ms. Salama Njai, National Network Coordinator of WANEP, ECOWAS Special Representative in the Gambia. Excellencies, partners, my dear friends and colleagues, thank you all for attending this PBC meeting on the transitional justice process of the Gambia. At the onset, Mr. Chair, allow me to express and extend our sincere gratitude to both the Honorable Foreign and Justice Ministers for their informative and useful briefings on the Gambia. Together with my team and colleagues, it is an honor to welcome Dauda A. Jallo, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, to his first meeting with the Commission and to assure him of our full support towards his efforts in the challenging transitional justice processes. I also seize the opportunity to convey our deepest appreciation to Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, Special Representative of the Secretary General for West Africa and the Sahel, the ECOWAS Resident Representative to the Gambia, and Ms. Salama Njai, National Network Coordinator of WANEP, for their commitment to peace and security in the Gambia and the entire ECOWAS sub-region. I also extended similar appreciation to the entire UN country team in the Gambia. My appreciation also goes to you, the chair of the Commission, Oscar and the team at the PBSO, members of the Commission, all partners and attendees for your continuous support and engagement with the Gambia. I thank you and your entire teams for partnering with us to organize today's briefing. Mr. Chair, in addition to conveying our gratitude to you all, I also align myself with the statements delivered by Dr. Mohamed Tangara, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad, and Dauda A. Jallo, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Gambia. Mr. Chair, we are most grateful to the Commission for the continued exercise of its convening power in the interest of prevention, peace building, and development for security and sustainable peace in the Gambia. The Peace Building Commission's continued engagement with my country and the continued periodic reporting to the Commission confirms the commitment the government of the Gambia attaches to this important partnership. Today's high-level representation of the Gambia to this meeting also further emphasizes the importance the government continues to exhibit its endeavor. To conclude, Mr. Chair, the timely intervention of PBC and other partners have helped the Gambia to build dividends of democracy, peace building, and sustaining peace. And this we must continue to sustain and strengthen with your continuous support and further engagement. Your intervention in the Gambia will go down in history as one of the best reference points for preventive diplomacy. It is a journey we started together, and I once again urge the Commission and all partners to continue extending solidarity, cooperation, and more importantly, accompanied us to the end of our transition processes. As a government and people, we value your partnership and remain grateful to all of you. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's wonderful to hear from you. Oscar.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And also let me add my words of thanks to the very high-level briefers that we had here with us today, the two ministers, our good friend, Minister Tangara, and to welcome you, Minister of Justice and Attorney General Jallow. We hope this is the first of many such encounters. And to our colleagues from UNOWAS, ECOWAS, the resident coordinator and the UNDP rep who's present, and the representative of WANEP. I think this really speaks to the very dynamic engagement we've been having since 2017. The way that this Peacebuilding Commission has been able to adapt its working methods to actually include this very interactive dialogue with the leadership of the democratic transition in the Gambia has been quite crucial. It's been crucial for us to hear in live debate what the key peace-building priorities of the government have been. And I'm very proud that the work that we have been able to accomplish through the Peacebuilding Commission, our colleagues in the PBSO, to respond very rapidly, very flexibly, and in a very catalytic manner to the key priorities that were crucial to this democratic transition, and mainly in the issue of security sector reform, which was one of the first programs that we jump-started to support the coordination efforts, but also the extremely important work that needed to start with the healing, with the building of trust, with the building of solidarity within the country. And that was epitomized by the work of the Commission on Truth and Reconciliation and Reparations. We've committed more than $5 million to this process, and it has been outstanding. You all have received an update on the progress reports of the Peacebuilding Fund, but this joint work that UNDP and OACHR provided in terms of technical assistance, logistics, to create this commission from scratch and to have it allowed to interact with over 35,000 victims of injustice and to bring the voice of justice and the procedures to start the healing and the reconciliation has been paramount in this transition. And so we very much appreciate how this democratic transition has been really supported by the Commission, but also to hear the challenges that transitional reforms posit to the country. And both ministers have been extremely eloquent in their briefings. We particularly, I think, recognize the commitment and the effort that the government is undertaking to try to find solutions, and this in terms of the impasse on this new constitution that needs to reflect, if you will, the will and aspiration of the people. And particularly important has been the establishment of this independent panel to revisit the constitution. And most importantly, and I think this was echoed through all the interventions, the importance to build consensus and the importance to build inclusion and dialogue. Here I echo SRSG's Chamba's message and the message from ECOWAS, extremely important, how can I say, step that the government has taken to include active collaboration and dialogue with civil society organizations, crucial to the aspect of building trust and legitimacy of institutions. And finally, as our colleagues from WANEP has stated, the crucial role of women and youth in this process as agents of change and peace building. Women and young people have been at the forefront of the democratic transition, of the overthrow of the previous regime, and in thrusting forward all these key reforms. So their voice should count for a lot. I say this because in terms of the second phase of an SSR project that was alluded to regarding PBF funding, I think it's extremely important that this SSR program actually emanates from these reforms that are actively being discussed. And there's been a lot in terms of what needs to happen in terms to undertake SSR with a human rights lens and inclusion. And so we are actively waiting to hear how PBF funding coordinated with that of other donors, because PBF is not the only donor. We have the UN, we have the European Union, we have ECOWAS, we have bilateral donors, to see how this coordinated effort actually takes place so that we can jointly support the next phase of the SSR. But here again, this is so linked to this constitutional debate that I cannot stress more that the point of the PBF funding is to actually bring forward areas of consensus and progress on these issues. So I thank you for this opportunity to relay directly to the minister that I know he's eagerly awaiting to see what the outcome of the second phase of the SSR program will be. And for me to be able to state here publicly and in this context that this very much depends on how the constitutional reform processes goes forward in this consensual manner. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Oscar. Colleagues, very briefly, in assuming as chair that I still do have the final word, I want to start by thanking very much all of our guests who have really given us a very compelling overview of what is taking place. Both ministers, I think, have given us a very powerful sense of the extent of what's been done and what is being done, but also the extent of the challenges. Speaking as a Canadian, I would say that we have constitution making in our bones. We have never stopped doing it, and we know how difficult constitutional reform is. Speaking personally, I spent 25 years of my life working on constitutional issues in my own country as well as in many other countries. And I think we all recognize that it's a tremendous challenge. I think the key point that we have to make, and I'll make it with respect to a couple of other key issues, is that the ownership for constitutional change lies with the people of Gambia. It does not lie with any outside advisors. It does not lie with any so-called experts or consultants. It lies with the people. Having said that, I think the mediation process is extremely important. And I congratulate the government of Gambia for working with eminent leaders from Africa, as well as getting some of the technical support from IDEA, which is an organization which is well known to all of us. I think we all recognize the importance of this constitutional process, and we are extremely supportive of it, and will continue to be very supportive of it as we go forward. A couple of other points I want to make, just very, very briefly. Canada, of course, will continue to do its part. We've been focusing a lot on dealing with COVID relief, assistance through the Red Cross, working on the reconciliation and reparation process, and we will continue to do that. And in particular, I'm personally very aware of our accountability partnership with respect to Myanmar, and it's only appropriate that we continue with this principle of accountability in all the work that we do in the truth, reconciliation, and reparations process. The people of Gambia have our full support, and we work in partnership with them. But let me conclude by where I began, and that is, this must be a process that is driven by the people and by the government of Gambia. We work in partnership with you, but we do so knowing that ultimately these choices depend on the political will and the leadership of the people of Gambia, and we will be as supportive of that as we possibly can. I appreciate very much the patience and presence of the ministers who've been with us, of all of our guests who've come, and to you, dear colleagues, for your presentations. We must work better together on the ground in coordinating what we do. We must work in strong partnership with the people of Gambia, recognizing that's where the ownership lies, and that's where it must lie. And I look forward to seeing you all at our next meeting at the call of the chair. Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.